buli muntu yenna ampuliriza. I know I'm broadcasting across the whole world, and right now I'm bringing about to you a topic called e-invoicing. What is it about e-invoicing? Electronic invoicing. What is it about an invoice? An invoice is like something. It's a business document. You have purchased a product and then you have not paid. So the supplier will give you an invoice showing you the price of the good to pay, and that's called an invoice. He will give you a paper invoice. When it comes to electronic invoicing, that means it is an electronic document showing your purchase and what you're required to pay. Now, I'm using this document because I want to show you, based on the websites that I've visited, and how this invoicing is being described. Now, this website was made as of 31st March 2023. So I'm reading it today, 19th April 2024. Electronic invoicing in Europe. What is it and when does it come into effect? Now, from 2028, it will be mandatory to report cross-border business-to-business transactions in Europe. The rest adapt is underway in member states, and Italian companies that trade with other EU countries will have to abide by the applicable regulations in their trading partner countries. Now, what is this e-invoicing? Because we see these questions like, what is European invoicing and why are we talking about it? Why are we talking about European electronic invoicing? What does e-invoicing come into effect in Europe? How to prepare for European e-invoicing? The partnership between Pagero and Intesa. And this invoicing is not only in Europe but in Africa. And currently the country that is on the verge of implementing mandatory e-invoicing is a country in East Africa called Uganda. And this e-invoicing has met a lot of sabotage from the traders. Okay, kangambe in like a local language, kuno okuwa receipt okumutimbagano kulese ko obutali bumativu mu basuubuzi mu bana business among the businessmen. Now, when we look at the EU, it is mandatory by 2028 every country in the EU will have e-invoicing. We are going to look at countries that have implemented this invoicing and what is it all about. So let's read about it. There's no full-blown electronic invoicing system in Europe at the moment, but there are many signs that the obligation for member countries to report cross-border transactions electronically is imminent. First of these is the proposal to revise the VAT regulations at European level. VAT in the digital age. Directive 2006/112/EC was released on the 8th December 2022. Two particular amendments have attracted the attention of insiders. Introduction of a mandatory reporting system for transactions within the EU. Every transaction must be reported. So this system will likely be based on electronic invoicing specifications of technological architecture, of which are still being worked out. Then from 2025, member states will be able to abolish the clause that requires prior agreement from customers before issuing electronic invoices, rather than the paper ones. So 2025, all member states shall remove the clause of a customer negotiating, like requires prior agreement from customers before issuing, meaning it will no longer be agreement whether you want a paper invoice or an electronic invoice. It will be mandatory for only electronic. Now, then what will follow? The elimination of Article 232 of the VAT Directive, by which member states are currently required to obtain a derogation to make electronic invoicing mandatory for business to business and business to consumer, meaning between two business people it will be mandatory to have the invoice. At the same time, business to consumer, when you're selling to the consumer, that is business to consumer, abolishing this requirement will make it easier for countries to introduce the obligation for electronic invoicing without first requesting authorization from the EU, and e-invoicing can be considered the default method rather than paper invoices. We are moving digital. Yes, because we are dealing with the paper forms. We are going paperless. It is highly likely, however, that it will be mandatory for business to business transactions only between EU countries and remain optional for domestic transactions, that is for business to consumer. Why are we talking about the European electronic invoicing? Because the EU directive on VAT will be 17 years old in 2023, and an update to bring it more closely in line with innovations that have taken place in recent years has been hoped and expected for some time, that is electronic commerce. But what has finally convinced the EU to update the reporting procedures are the latest figures on tax evasion. Abantu tebagala kusosola misoro. People don't want to pay taxes. In cross-border commercial transactions, which put losses at 50 to 70 billion euros per year, you see the amount of tax that is being lost every year. To overcome the problem and simplify value-added tax monitoring, the EU has apparently decided to standardize and digitize the processes. By reforming the regulations, it is estimated that around 11 billion euros in value-added tax payments will be recovered across Europe each year. Introducing the obligation will also facilitate the creation of the digital single market and interoperability between states. They say that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. What comes around comes around. During the Roman system, tax was mandatory. Okay. We shall add on tomorrow as we look at this e-invoicing when it comes to effect in Europe and everywhere, because we are going paperless and going digital. Have a good night. I remain your researcher, Dennis Muhoz.